Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Build Exact webinar on rethinking product images and videos that drive more sales. Very excited to introduce you to Greg Weyman, who's the founder and managing partner of Market Thrive. Greg has deep experience in the marketing industry and has done a lot of work in helping marketers reduce the friction in video production with CGI. They do some really great things with the tools that, as we've gotten more tools, they've not gotten easier to use. It's actually confused it. So it's great to have somebody that has been there, done it, knows exactly what they're doing. And he's also got a good focus on the building materials space. So I think you'll find this really interesting and valuable time spent. Greg, over to you.
All right, thanks, Gary. I'm gonna get my screen set up here. Looks like we're good. All right, well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining me here with Gary. Here to talk to you a lot about how really we as marketers and brands and businesses need to start thinking about how we get better product images and video, because as this world has changed to shift to digital, it really is vital to marketing and sales, because they're so instrumental in how people find products they're looking for, and then how they understand your products and to purchase them specifically. So I'm going to first talk you through a little bit, obviously, this idea of how things have changed in our world. You can't escape the headlines. Obviously, we've been through some crazy times in the last couple of years, but really what we're talking about here is a shift in how people do business as a result. I think we've all felt that. This is not a news flash, but obviously this idea that the pandemic really has shifted people online in every segment, whether it's groceries, retail, and building materials as well. So retail sales is obviously something that the Commerce Department tracks. So this data here shows how this is really moving in the direction of percentage of e-commerce sales to retail sales, continues to grow. I know we're not all in retail, but really this same idea is in the building B2B space as well. Again, the where things are going from the standpoint of B2B sales, we all have to ask ourselves, how can we get more involved in the digital selling environment? And so I think at the end of the day, what we're really talking about here is the customer buying experience. And as marketers and sales folks and teams, we have to understand how that buying experience has changed and what we can do to better support the buyer when they're in these digital worlds. So again, what it means, if we think about all the activity that we now have to do as marketers, everything really comes down to the customer journey. And through that customer journey, there's different pivot points, and we may all have, using some of these, we may use all of them, but the reality is we're all in the digital space here with really the content business. So the fact we're all in the content business creates a lot of challenges from the standpoint of how we create more content with, basically doing more with less. And I think that comes down to really understanding where we should focus our efforts and what products need to be shown, how we inspire customers, in a way that really works for our business, and frankly, in a way that we can do it affordably and with the time that we have. So when we think about content, again, everybody talks about search algorithms, but I think, whether that's Google, whether that's your site, whether that's an online site like Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, they all function in a way where the algorithm is driving search results in very similar ways. And really the baseline algorithm fuel, if you will, is imagery and videos and content about your product. There's a lot of studies I'm going to show here that back this up, that really the formula is better content drives better conversion, and better conversion drives better search results and sales as a result of that. So you'll see the stats here, what we'd call A-rated content, which is quality, good content, can drive as much as 21 times the number of conversions of lower rated content. So that's really what I'm going to walk you through here is some stats that really show how, whether it's your website, whether it's your social media, or your e-commerce sites, third-party sites, there really is a method to fueling this flywheel through better images. So again, some stats here: 83% of all buyers say that images are the most influential factor in their online purchases. The quantity of images is also very important. So 488% lift in sales, moving from 5 to 10 images on a product page. And from an Amazon perspective, 5+ images featured in a product display page will show 73% more sales on Amazon. So again, it's fueling this flywheel, which is essentially the algorithm, if you will. And it's not just images. Videos, very much the same way, bring that buying experience that the consumer and the customers want in the online world. So videos do the same thing when it comes to fueling results in sales and conversion. You'll see here, adding video to product pages on your website and or e-commerce sites can drive as much as 55% increase in conversion. And again, the number of images, as I mentioned a minute ago, can also have a very strong effect on improving sales. So I can't emphasize enough this idea of how much content actually plays a role, and our clients are frankly sometimes surprised because on some level it's I won't say it's an easy win, but at the same time it is that baseline that if you want to really start to amp up your sales in the online world, content is the great place to start on the foundation. One more stat here about improving benchmarks: beyond winning at availability and price, winning at content again shows 50% lift in an e-commerce site. So I think that comes down to really, obviously, the devices we're all using now, the platforms we're using. But if you think about what's been taken away, it's the touch, feel, see. So we need to come up with ways to tell our stories visually. And frankly, that's because people don't have the patience or the time to read through content as much as they used to. So our images are our most powerful way to tell that product story. We are visual learners at the end of the day. And I think these stats, again, proving 73% of all buyers say that good images are more important than product descriptions. The one I really love, and again, it's tried and true marketing, but buyers say that the quality of a product's image is directly tied to the product quality. So if we really want to project that quality brand perception and or product, we have to start with the highest quality imagery and videos that we can get. Again, an average person reads 20% of a web page, but claims to view 100% of the images. Again, it's just easier, faster. It's a better way for us as consumers and shoppers to understand what it is we're buying, that look, touch, feel, if you will. And lastly, 53% of buyers say that images are more important than reviews as well. So I think this idea is clear, obviously, that content is so important to the customer experience, and how we go about that is really the foundation to building more sales. I think the challenge that we hear from customers, and frankly, in my own background, running marketing departments, there's only so much time, and photo shoots and production of video are frankly very expensive. So this idea of how do we get if we have 1,000 SKUs or 500 SKUs, how do we get an image not only of every one that's accurate and top quality, but then getting 360 views of that same product, an inspiration image with the product installed. Those kind of images are frankly expensive and daunting when in mass quantity. So the reality is not everybody does have the time or the budget, but that's where this technology that we specialize in, CGI technology, where we make product visuals in a photorealistic setting, it really is a game changer from the standpoint of creating content that is hits all the quality marks, but at the same time takes out all the friction, if you will, from a traditional production standpoint. So no travel is required. There's no actual physical studio or photo shoot that happens. In our world with building materials, there's no set construction, no finding homeowners, no trying to find a location. There's no shipping of products and getting it installed, no assembly. Again, it's all done in a digital space here, and I'll show you how we're doing that with this technology. But at the end of the day, we're talking about lowering the total cost of photography. You know, you might have budgets from shipping that come from one budget, you know, contractors coming in and building items for another budget. But the reality is you add that all together, you're going to be able to do more images, more videos with this technology, in addition to having a whole lot more versatility if and when you need to come back and, you know, add new colors, new textures, new product line extensions, if you will, to your existing models. We can come through with this technology and really save you a lot of time and effort there as well. I see there's a chat here. I'm going to stop real quick. Okay. Sorry, I see some questions here on how much are we seeing. Gary, do you want to answer or jump in on that one?
Sure, Greg, the question is, how much are you seeing e-commerce grow at your organization? And I would extend that to across the builder market industry. Are you seeing a big push in new e-commerce efforts?
Absolutely. Again, the clients we're working with, whether it's large brand manufacturers or challenger brands in every segment, again, the stats I showed up front, the pandemic shifted this entire emphasis to a degree that none of us saw coming. But again, we are seeing where, call it the likes of Home Depot and Lowe's, obviously that's a big push for them because their customers want that buying experience. But what we're also seeing is that same, we're all consumers at the end of the day. So contractors, distributors are getting questions more and more about how they can bring that frictionless buying experience, frankly, that Amazon has created for all of us, into the B2B environment. We're seeing that across the board again, that I think is a challenge for many beyond the logistics, the faster speed of delivery, but even from this baseline that we're talking here today, which is how do we create the content that creates that e-commerce buying experience? And again, that's what I think is the baseline opportunity here.
Yeah, I think I go back to that look, touch, feel comment you made, and how important that is when you're buying, you know, just a sink or looking for countertop or the sidings you want. That experience seems immensely valuable in this e-commerce environment.
It's huge. And again, so not only is it helping your customer buy, but it's helping your organization in search results and being found through those stats that we just showed. So again, it's fueling that algorithm and that search result. That's really the name of the game here once you have a platform that you are trying to reach customers.
Thank you, Greg. Any more questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll let you go back to it, Greg.
Great. Thanks, Gary. So I want to talk through a bit of how this works. Again, I talked a lot here about what we're doing, but I want to show you a bit of how this works. So we're really talking about CGI. A lot of people are familiar with it from the standpoint of Hollywood. It stands for computer generated imagery. And this is the stuff that a lot of folks think about, but we are actually borrowing a lot of this same technology. At the end of the day, it is a computer generated image based on a digital model where we add texture, color, and forced light that delivers photorealistic images and videos. So again, why is Hollywood using it? Because it saves time and money compared to going out and shooting something somewhere. That's the same idea we're doing here and in the same technology realm. So this is some examples I'm going to show you here. This is an environmental parking grid client of ours that, again, had a CAD file of this. We basically can take one file from it and create countless images through this technology. So we start with the main base image. We can easily change the color to the variety of the SKUs that are offered, but then we can take that same item and install it in an environment. So this entire scene is modeled and created, and you'll see that their actual product is then placed in a realistic installation for their customers to connect the dots and see what the actual product is. But yet none of this was actually shot. None of this is Photoshop. This is all the computer generated texturing and modeling. Another example, client wanted to go after commercial structures for their exterior paneling. So we created this model, again, one model from their product file that we were then able to create multiple looks and textures from their product line. But then we essentially have that building modeled, and we can now take that same just like you would in the real world with a camera, we can switch that view, we can spin it around, we can take it to, again, those angles that your customer may want to see to really understand how the product looks. Because again, the real game here is to build these items and then leverage them into different outputs. And in this case, it can be in set. It can be on white background, it can be 360s, and it can be video animation, which I'll show you here in a bit. But again, our purpose is really to help marketers understand that this technology exists and that we can help them really reduce time and money spent on traditional methods of production and build content that we're talking about here that helps drive sales. So everything I'm going to show you here are some ideas just to give you some sense of what's possible. But also these are all custom images, frankly, that we created for clients that I think will show you the breadth of opportunity that exists with building a better experience. Also saving time and money for the marketing team.
Yeah, Greg, along those lines of building a better experience, one of the questions that just came up is, when you work with building products, how is that different than when, say, somebody is doing socks or a TV on Amazon? Are there any rules that you found that make building products imagery work better than you'd normally do for more retail items?
Right. Interestingly enough, Gary, it's category agnostic in that sense. So while a pair of socks or something like that doesn't necessarily need 8 to 10 images of the sock, there is still the need to fuel the algorithm the same way. The one element I would say is different for building material brands is obviously the challenge of showing it in a silo white background environment, and then also showing it installed in multiple places and giving that level of inspiration, if you will, of actually being placed within a scene. So that's a bit of a different animal that I think, again, is the challenge for most marketers in this space, is how do we get accurate images of so many products that we have, in call it similar settings where people can compare things and actually see the product in the space that it's being installed in.
Thank you, Greg.
Yep. So again, how this technology really helps marketers do more is it's full creative control. So there's any application or installation you want to create. If it's a home style you want, we can create any home in any environment, any regional setting, any terrain. And really then again, we can create any angle from that. So I'll show you some examples again further on that. But really what it does too is it puts this on your time, on your schedule. It's not chasing somebody in the field that has a project that just finished. And you got to run out there and find a way to capture it. This is all created through your schedule. There's no installations, there's no travel, like I mentioned. There's no willing homeowners to try to sign up. It's all on your schedule. Another true benefit that we've learned through our clients is how this really speeds things up, that marketing can start sooner, perhaps even before the product is done. It could be used as a test. If your engineering department has CAD files and information on this that can be utilized to create images, you could send that out to get a flavor for test marketing and see in the space, how this actually might resonate with your customers. So that's a huge factor, especially with supply chain issues that are going on. The marketing element can start sooner without the product actually physically being available to install. And the last is getting an image of every single SKU you have. I think that's another challenge that we all live with in the traditional space, but customers yet want to see the exact item that they're buying. So this is a way to alter the model, if you will, that we create. You can do every color easily, like I showed. We can do every kind of variation, and that gives your marketing group full access to every single SKU or product that you have. So that's actually a huge benefit that our customers tell us over and over, that is new, frankly, for their marketing efforts. So some show and tell here, some ways to use our technology. I'm going to show you a variety of examples: interiors, exteriors, again, a bunch of different client work that we have here. And I want to stress again, none of this is photoshopped. None of this was taken with any photography. This was all essentially created through inspiration images and CAD files that I'll show you here in a bit. But again, sinks, product lifestyle images. As I mentioned to Gary, how having things in an environment is obviously in this space very important. So we can create any environment, whether interior or exterior, to really show that realistic setting of the product in its environment. Here's a home that we created, again, for some exterior materials. Once we have that actually created in this model, if you will, we can then take any angle, like I mentioned. So again, you're bolstering your quantity of images pretty easily. It's essentially leveraging the model you have and creating more images that, again, will fuel that flywheel and search result algorithm. You can do niche marketing. Again, so we had a client that does spiral staircases, and they wanted to really hit this, what I'd call, dock market. So they had sent us some pictures of some, what I'd say are traditional docks, but they wanted to go after a higher end customer. So we created this idea virtually, and again, put their stair in a realistic setting, in the environment that they were really after from a niche perspective, but then are able to take that camera, if you will, the virtual camera, and shoot every angle that the customer may want to see, because it, again, gives that digital touch feel see, but also fuels the algorithms by having more imagery of the product themselves. This is another one. Hillman is a client of ours that essentially is leveraging this technology from the standpoint of they have so many SKUs, but they have image needs that come down to in package, 360s, and then inset lifestyle images where the product is actually installed. So we took all their products in this setting here and created each one of those virtually, if you will, through the CGI technology. Again, these are what I call the check boxes from the consumer experience. The white silos without anything in them except for the product, the in packaging items, and then the installed inset environment. So that's what we're doing here. Again, very easily. There's no need to create multiple sets. It was all done over the course of a couple of weeks, frankly, where we were able to create all these, again, to solve their content needs for them in an easier fashion. Again, more alternate perspective samples here, just to drive this point home that once we have this set built, we can shift that camera around as we would if it were a traditional production. So we can get product details that you may want to show your customers, call them differentiators, benefits, things that really, again, tell that product story in a way that makes your product stand out and gives that customer a chance to learn more about it through the images. This is a great example of how we're leveraging the technology. We're building, essentially in the faucet world, there's only so many ways you can show a product in an engaging way. And it's a very, kitchens change a lot, so trends change a lot. and the idea of putting different faucets in different scenes. You know, if you were building 6 different kitchen scenes, it would be quite a production. But in this case, we can take the exact same scene, if you will, and update different areas of the model to give it a different feel. So different tile, different things in the window, different countertops. So to the eye, it looks like a completely different kitchen, but yet at the same time, it's very comparable for the consumer, which is one more element of this world that I think is extremely important, is the idea of showing how to compare things from one to the next. So that's frankly a very efficient way for us to leverage modeling throughout the process to, again, give you more images for more SKUs. We're seeing a large growth in what I call container CGI, clients that have hundreds or thousands of SKUs that, again, have different labels on them, but at the same time, maybe they only have several, not an infinite number of container sizes. So in this case here, we've got 1 gallon, 5 gallon, et cetera. We can then swap out the hundreds of labels very easily once we've created the can model. And at the same time, I wanted to share this one because obviously the labels are different, but if you look at the lighting and the consistency of the presentation, it's exactly the same, which is one more benefit, in addition to obviously not having to shoot every single one of these items. We can take your artwork, the same artwork that your packaging folks use, and wrap it across these virtual models. So again, it just saves time, effort, and money, and at the same time presents the product in a more consistent way. This is a great example of what I call a traditional stylized photo shoot of a product, an unboxed item. We can add elements of a traditional photo shoot like this reflective nature, things like that. And again, shift the angle around where the consumer can see the actual product in a high quality, high brand presentation. The last element of this from the standpoint of utilizing a model, it may not be for everyone, but again, this idea of leveraging more of the models. This is obviously something that's growing in our space, which is the ability to add anything within an actual realistic setting. So we can take a model of a faucet, we can actually put it into a VR augmented reality environment. And I know this is still growing and newer in our industry, but this is something that will continue to help drive that look, feel, see for customers, because it takes it to the level of personalization, which is this next element of show me exactly what I need in my space. So again, just one more way to show you how this technology is being leveraged. I'll show you this because, again, this is a growing situation where we have, for contractors and/or partners in the field, sales teams, taking what I'd call unpleasant photos and making them marketing friendly, and/or before and afters, which are obviously big in the building material space as well. But this idea that we can take a hybrid, what I call a hybrid CGI approach, where we're utilizing an existing, frankly, an iPhone photo taken of a deck that clearly needs work, and then showing the customer what their completed deck would look like utilizing this composite decking brand. So that includes the railing. And again, it can be done relatively affordably because of the efficiencies in the technology that we're using. So similarly, we have a lot of, what I call messy sets in our world, right? But in this case, we're taking what was an incomplete set, but yet the products were all installed from the client's perspective. But we were able to clean it up in a way where we took out distractive elements. We added, obviously, a nice curb appeal and cleaned up things with, adding lights and pots. Long story short, we're adding the elements that make it a marketing friendly image in a much more efficient way, in a simple way, and in a way that helps the consumer, again, connect the before and after. Lastly, a huge benefit of this model leveraging, I'll call it, once we have the model built, obviously we can do lifestyle insets, we can do the white solo backgrounds, we can do 360s, but animation is one more element that we can do. So rather than a full video crew going out, we can take the same model that we built and bring a virtual camera approach to it, where we're actually showing a home in a realistic animation. That again is just a powerful way for you to engage with your customers, but save you all the time and effort that it would have taken to do this in the realistic setting. Similarly, our world is obviously built around installation and how to do things. That is another factor to Gary's question earlier that I would say is different about the building material industry, is how to install things, whether it's a quick overview for the homeowner to give them a little sense of a DIY project, or if it's your full contractor detail videos. We can take these elements and again, essentially build without the distraction of hands or the distractions perhaps of an environment, if that's desired, to really get to the core, to the meat of the instruction. And so again, we're taking the same model product, but we're putting it into an environment again where it's all about the product in a clear step-by-step way that again saves the time and saves the effort, but also gives you the controllable creative situation that you can create everything in the environment that you want. So yeah, I'll break here. Gary, is there a question?
There are a couple of questions popping up. First, I want to say the installation videos, I think is gold. I don't do any DIY project at home without some installation video. So that just means if I look at a product that says, man, here's the video, it's so easy to install, that is a buy signal for me. So that's really fascinating. I think we're going to get to that, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about process. You mentioned CAD files and product images. Is that all you need from that? Is somebody snap an iPhone photo of a product and maybe a CAD file and you can spin it all up, or is there more to it?
It is as simple as that in many cases. So the process is there's two ways for us to create models. The first is CAD files, and that's a variety of formats. I won't spit them all off here, but most CAD file formats work for us. And then we take that and convert that into our software format that we can add texture and color. But if your department or your company doesn't have access to the CAD files, depending on the complexity, in most cases, we can take a cell phone photo, that you guys, that the client provides, and dimensions and some understanding of sizing and things like that. And we can actually create the models manually. So the cost is a bit more, but at the same time, depending on complexity, it may not even be much more. It really comes down to having an understanding of the proportions and the accuracy of the product as we create that digital twin model. So I'll actually walk a little bit more into this. So how we scope this work comes down to, again, it's very similar to other creative production work, I would say, from the standpoint of it is somewhat of a time game. It's an hours game. How much time and effort is in that for us? But it really comes down to unique products that you have. So I'm putting this in shoes because it's something we can all relate to, and I think it'll just connect the story a bit more. So we have a product assortment. If you tell me you have, really what I'd say it comes down to shapes. So you have 4 different shapes of a product, 4 different SKUs of a product that are unique in shape. That is the first model build, if you will. So we would build 4 models that represent every shape. Then from there, we can add the perspectives. So we've got that model built. And again, you saw my examples. We can then spin it. We can put it in every sort of view that you would like, whether it's 360 or up close, things like that. At the same time, the SKU count here plays in. If you have a shoe with 10 different colors, again, we have that model built. We can add the 10 different color variations to that same model and do the same perspective of each one of those. So it starts with the unique model, and from there goes into your unique SKU attributes, and then perspectives that you want. And again, from there, we can take that same idea and say, how many inset scenes do you want? Because once we get out of the white background environment, there is a bit more modeling for us to do. The items I showed are all created. They're not layered in with existing photos or anything like that. So that's just more of the complexity, if you will, for building the scene around the item. But again, it comes down to efficiencies and what the complexity is of those requests. From a spec standpoint, we typically deliver all images in high def 4K resolution. Animation is 1080i. So again, it's all very crisp and clear. And we can go higher, as needed. If you have trade show or some large billboard, those kind of high resolution demands, those can be made as well. But it comes down to, again, the number of items you have and the number of images related to that item that you want to create. From the process standpoint, what I'd show you here is this is the modeling process. So we would take a CAD file, whether it was a spiral staircase or a canister of deodorant. We model that item in this element, in this view, if you will, where it's grayscale. It's really about checking detail with your team, and understanding, making sure that we interpreted the information provided correctly. And then once we get a sign off on this, then we can create that sort of next level, which is the full color textured item. And that brings in the lighting, brings in the shadows, brings in that realistic look. And so, the whole process, again, is depending on complexity of your product. It's usually very simple. In most cases, we try to work in a weeks, not months, time frame. Typically, a product like this, from a complexity standpoint, we can do in 2 to 4 weeks. So that doesn't slow us down. If you have 100 of those or 1,000 of those, that's our level of speed that we try to create. And again, it's a very collaborative online approval process. Everything we share is through online review galleries that you can make comments and you can easily share it with teams to get the full buy-in, to make sure you have an accurate product and an accurate image that represents your organization in the way that it needs to. Some ways to really think this through from an efficiency standpoint would be volume production. So I've kind of walked through this idea of leveraging the model. Once you have the model, creating a one-off item in a one-off picture, we can do that. It's certainly, from a cost per image standpoint, going to be more than if we took that item and did a 360 of it. So that's that sort of volume production idea I would try to stress. Again, then you think about that same model, the existing output variations. If you have one model with 10 different colors, that's much more efficient than, from the standpoint of cost per image metric as well. Same with angles. Change of color and change of angles is typically about the same from our standpoint for production complexity. So you just start to, again, really use that model in as many images as you can. The scene swaps, I mentioned that. Animation, I mentioned that. So again, just taking that product and using it in as many ways as you can really reduces the cost per image and frankly makes it much more productive and time efficient for us. Once we're in there with the file, creating those alterations, that's really where the efficiency begins. But that said, we work with a lot of large brands, but we also work with a lot of small businesses. This is not a product, or I should say a process that's outrageously expensive. It's a custom pricing. So we have to understand what your product is, what your needs are, to the scoping list I just reviewed. But it's really, I don't want to make this look like it's out of reach for challenger brands or smaller businesses. And so how we quote that is what I just showed through the scoping. And what I would say from a standpoint of giving this a try, I was joking with Gary earlier, we we could show a client that does faucets, 1,000 different faucets, but until they see their own, it's not as easy to see what it can do. So we have learned that the best way for this to work for all involved is to do a proof of concept. So I would encourage you guys to contact me. You can visit this URL, or you can do the QR code here on screen to sign up, and we'll contact you to walk through maybe what you have in mind from a standpoint of trying something and showing you how this could work specifically with a product that you have, where you'll walk away with a realistic photo image of your product as part of the test.
One of the questions that came up, not just on cost, but on the time cost of that. What is the appropriate person that you typically deal with in an organization, and what's the time commitment on their side of that? And I ask because a lot of our dealers are struggling with labor shortages. We have front office staff going out and driving forklifts. So can you give them an idea of what kind of time investment they'll make in this process?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I would start with the question of who. Typically, it's marketing and or a product manager / engineer, depending on who owns that product knowledge within the organization. A lot of times it's a collaboration between those two groups that we work with. But our typical person isn't from a marketing capacity because of the brand presence, and they typically pull the engineering group or the product team group. From the standpoint of, I'm sorry, Gary, what was the next part of the question? It was how much time, sorry.
Yeah, the time commitment, right.
Time, got it. So again, every product has different levels of complexity, but I want to tell you it's very minimal effort once the product content is given to us. So I'd say that the upfront is defining the scope from the team members. There's obviously some time involved there. What do you need? Talking through with us specifics of what those needs are, and then gathering the call it CAD files or photos and dimensions in a way that we can use. From there, it becomes very simple because, again, I mentioned the online review portal that we have. We send links to galleries with all the image results, and the individual or individuals reviewing this can go in and make comments without any conference calls, any, creative meetings. It's simply giving us comments right in the image themselves. Our team reviews those, makes those revisions, sends them back. And again, so we're talking, very minimal time to once the products are actually presented in the imagery. It really is, that's where the time savings just expand and grow exponentially, frankly, because they're not wasting time at photo shoots and all those things I mentioned earlier. The production process is very efficient.
Perfect. Are there any more questions popping up on the chat? I don't see any yet. I think we got them all.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know your time is limited, so I appreciate you choosing to spend a little bit of that with us. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Greg at Market Thrive or anyone on the Build Exact team, and we'll be happy to steer you to the right place to get all the questions answered and get you started with this new technology and the way to work and going forward in the post-pandemic world. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.